What if I told you that the origins of life on Earth could be traced back to Australia? Or that the very flag you see flying has hidden secrets that tell the story of this unique country? If you're American, these facts might just blow your mind. But if you're Australian, well, I bet you're here to see if I've gotten any of these details wrong, right? Come along as we explore 15 of the most surprising and fascinating things that can only be found in Australia. Get ready for some jaw-dropping discoveries. Australia's Commonwealth star on the flag. When Australia became a federation in 1901, it started with just 6 states: New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, Victoria, and Western Australia. And here's a fun fact. The original Australian flag, back when it was first created, looked a little different from what we see today. The big star, the Commonwealth star, had exactly 6 points to represent those 6 states. Pretty cool, huh? But wait, the story gets even more interesting. So in 1908, the Commonwealth star went from 6 to 7 points when the Northern Territory was moved from South Australia to Commonwealth control. This was because at that point, Australia officially had 7 states and territories under Commonwealth jurisdiction. And since then, the star has remained with 7 points. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. In 1928, the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT, which was carved out of New South Wales to sit right between the 2 big states, Victoria and New South Wales, was added to the Commonwealth. You'd think that would bump the star up to 8 points, right? But nope, it stayed at 7. Why? Well, I honestly have no clue. But hey, if you crack it, do let me know. Hash the Southern Cross on Australia's flag. Let's talk about the 5 stars on the right side of the Australian flag. At first, they might just look like another pretty design. But actually, they're anything but random. These stars form the Southern Cross constellation. It's the shining star of the Southern Hemisphere's night sky. Bright, unmistakable, and full of history. For centuries, the Southern Cross has been more than just a beautiful sight. To early explorers, it wasn't only a guiding star, it was a lifeline. Imagine being on a tiny ship surrounded by endless oceans, with pitch-black nights ahead. The faint glow of the stars was all they had to navigate. And the Southern Cross? It led them to the shores of what we now call Australia. No wonder this constellation is featured on the Australian flag. It's more than just stars. It's a symbol of discovery, resilience, and Australia's lasting connection to the sky above. The intriguing origins of the name Australia. Let's dive into the story behind the name Australia. Believe it or not, it comes from the Latin term Terra Australis, meaning southern land. And here's the fun part. This name was coined by Claudius Ptolemy, a Greek scholar and one of the greatest geographers of the ancient world, over 1,500 years before Europeans even set foot on the continent. That's some impressive foresight, don't you think? This scholar had a theory. There had to be a massive landmass in the southern hemisphere to balance out all the continents in the north. It seemed logical at the time, but here's where it gets even more interesting. After centuries of exploration and mapping, when the true shape of the Earth was finally revealed, it turned out he was right. There was a significant landmass in the south. The only catch? The southern hemisphere has less land than the northern hemisphere, which is why, well, the Earth doesn't exactly have perfect balance. Could that be why it's tilted on its axis? Just kidding. Or maybe not. Fast forward to the 16th century, and the Dutch were the first Europeans to land on Australian shores, followed by the British. Their explorations confirmed what the Greek scholar had imagined so long ago. A mix of logic and just a bit of guesswork that turned out to be surprisingly accurate. The founding of Australia and the legacy of January 26th. Now let's talk about the moment Australia was officially put on the map, literally. In 1770, Captain James Cook, one of history's most famous explorers, charted the eastern coastline of Australia. And as explorers tended to do back then, he claimed the land for the British Empire. No treaties, no discussions. Just a flag in the ground and the declaration, "This is ours now." It was all very on brand for the 18th century, but things didn't really take off until 18 years later. In 1788, Captain Arthur Phillip arrived in Sydney Cove with the first fleet. Imagine this: 11 creaking wooden ships crossing treacherous oceans, carrying around 1,350 people. Among them were convicts, Marines, officers, and even a few children. But here's the striking part. The majority were convicts, sent from Britain to serve their sentences in this strange and distant land. Talk about an extreme relocation program. On January 26, 1788, Phillip raised the Union Jack, officially establishing Australia as a British colony. And today, that date is celebrated as Australia Day. But not everyone sees it as a reason to cheer. For many Indigenous Australians, it marks the beginning of colonization, a painful chapter in their history that displaced communities and brought immense hardship to people who had lived on this land for tens of thousands of years. The story of Sydney, from giant outdoor prison to Australia's oldest and largest city. It's hard to believe that Sydney, the vibrant global city we know today, with its iconic Opera House and Harbour Bridge, began its story as a penal colony. That's right. In 1788, when Captain Arthur Phillip and the First Fleet arrived, Sydney Cove became home to thousands of British convicts sent to the other side of the world to serve their sentences. Imagine arriving on these shores, tasked with building a new colony from scratch. But here's the remarkable part. Those convicts didn't just survive. They built a nation. Many of them were skilled laborers, tradespeople, or farmers, and their efforts laid the groundwork for modern Australia. From hardship came resilience, a trait that still defines the country today. Fast forward to the present, and Sydney is one of the most dynamic, multicultural cities in the world. Over 30% of its residents were born overseas, and millions of Australians can trace their roots back to immigrants, whether they arrived by choice or were sent here as convicts. So next time you walk along Circular Quay or gaze at the Harbour Bridge, think about the extraordinary journey of this city. From a place of exile to a beacon of opportunity, Sydney's story is a testament to human resilience and transformation. The story of Melbourne, Australia's cultural capital and former political heart. Melbourne, Australia's second largest city, but don't let that fool you. Ask any Melburnian, and they'll proudly tell you it's second to none. Known as the cultural capital of Australia, Melbourne is a dream for anyone who loves festivals, art, and a social scene that never quits. From the International Comedy Festival to world-class music events, this city throws festivals like confetti, everywhere and often. But Melbourne's charm doesn't stop there. For 7 years straight, from 2011 to 2017, it was crowned the world's most livable city. Even today, it holds a top spot, and it's not hard to see why. With its stunning green spaces, buzzing street culture, and an obsession with coffee so strong it could be a religion, Melbourne knows how to live. Seriously, if you're in Melbourne and haven't ordered a flat white yet, we need to talk. Now, here's a twist in Australia's history. When the Commonwealth was born in 1901, Melbourne, not Sydney, was chosen as the temporary capital. Why? Because Canberra, the purpose-built capital, didn't exist yet. So for over 20 years, Melbourne played host to the nation's leaders while the country figured things out. That's right, this cultural powerhouse wasn't just about art and coffee. It was once the heart of Australian politics. Australia, the world's largest island and smallest continent. Australia is a continent of extremes, but here's a surprising one. It's the least populated continent on Earth. Well, unless you count Antarctica, but penguins don't fill out census forms. With a population of just under 27 million, Australia has fewer people than Tokyo's metropolitan area, which is home to a staggering 37 million people. That's right, one city has more people than an entire continent. And it's not just Tokyo. Other major urban areas like Delhi and Shanghai also outnumber Australia's population by millions. Compare this to Australia's vast size of 7.69 million square kilometers, and you get the lowest population density of any inhabited continent, about 3.5 people per square kilometer. Plenty of room to stretch out, don't you think? But while Australia might not win in numbers, it's certainly a heavyweight in size. It's the biggest island in the world, if you choose to see it as one giant island rather than a continent, and more than 3 times the size of Greenland, the runner-up for world's largest island. Australia's giants, from rocks to reefs. Australia might have a small population, but it's home to some truly big things, literally. Let's start with Uluru, the world's largest sandstone monolith. Rising majestically from the Red Desert, it's not just a rock, it's a sacred site for the Anangu people and a powerful symbol of Australia's rugged beauty. And while Uluru is undoubtedly impressive, Australia has another giant that often gets overlooked. Meet Mount Augustus, a colossal formation in Western Australia. This massive rock is even bigger than Uluru, making it the world's largest single rock structure. It's so vast that you could actually fit Uluru inside it several times over. And then there's the Great Barrier Reef, the crown jewel of Australia's coastline. Stretching an unbelievable 2,300 kilometers, it's not just the largest coral reef system, it's the biggest living structure on Earth. Home to a kaleidoscope of marine life, it's so vast it's visible from space. To put it in perspective, its area is larger than entire countries like Italy or Portugal. The birthplace of life, Shark Bay and the ancient Stromatolites. Let's head to Shark Bay, located on the far west coast of Australia. This isn't just a breathtaking natural wonder, it's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it holds a pivotal role in the history of life on Earth. This place is where life itself began. The stars of Shark Bay are the Stromatolites, ancient rock formations created by colonies of cyanobacteria. These tiny organisms have been around for over 3.5 billion years, making them the earliest evidence of life on our planet. In fact, stromatolites are considered the birthplace of life, as they existed long before plants, animals, or complex cells even appeared. Standing here, you're literally looking at the origins of life itself. It's not just a historical site, it's the beginning of everything. How cool is that? Australia's deadliest. Australia is home to some of the deadliest creatures on Earth, from over 1,500 species of spiders like the infamous redback and Sydney funnel web, to 21 of the world's 25 most venomous snakes. The inland taipan, for example, could wipe out over 100 grown men with a single bite. But don't let that scare you. These creatures aren't out to get you. They mostly keep to themselves. Dangerous encounters are rare, and most of the time, they're just minding their own business. So, while they sound terrifying, the odds of running into trouble are pretty slim. Thunderstorm asthma. Australia is no stranger to extreme weather, but did you know that thunderstorms here can trigger something called thunderstorm asthma? It's a rare but serious phenomenon that occurred in Melbourne back in 2016. During this particular storm, more than 8,000 people were hospitalized with asthma attacks triggered by the storm's high winds and pollen. Tragically, 9 people lost their lives in the chaos. Now you might be thinking, what does a storm have to do with asthma? Well, the combination of pollen, dust, and strong winds can create a perfect storm for those with respiratory issues. The particles are swept into the air and inhaled, causing severe allergic reactions and asthma attacks. It's just one of those strange and somewhat terrifying quirks of Australia's weather that highlights how unpredictable the climate here can be. Eating the national symbol, kangaroo meat in Australia. Australia is one of the few places in the world where eating the national symbol, kangaroo, is not just common, but also encouraged. Kangaroo meat is lean, packed with protein, and low in fat, making it a healthy alternative to beef and lamb. It's also an environmentally friendly option, helping to manage the exploding kangaroo population. With nearly 27 million humans in Australia, it's estimated that there are around 60 million kangaroos hopping around the country. Definitely more kangaroos than people. You can find kangaroo meat in many Australian restaurants and even in grocery stores, though it's not something most Aussies eat every day. It's a bit of a delicacy, but when you do try it, you'll be amazed at how tender and flavorful it is. Just be ready for a dining experience that's a little more wild than your usual steak. So, next time you're in Australia, don't be afraid to give Kangaroo a go. It's a taste of the outback that's truly unique. Australia is a nation shaped by waves of immigration, and this rich diversity is reflected in its language. More than 300 languages are spoken here, with around 200 of them used by communities that aren't Indigenous. These include Italian, Cantonese, Arabic, Mandarin, and many more. But we can't forget the Aussie English. Known for its relaxed, friendly vibe, Aussie English is full of casual, easygoing phrases and plenty of abbreviations. For instance, Aussies often say g'day instead of good day and avo for afternoon. It's all part of what makes Australian English so distinctive, blending British roots with a uniquely Australian flair. An Aussie Christmas, sun, sea, and BBQ. While most of the world is gearing up for a white Christmas in December, Australians are busy preparing for a summer feast. Yes, you heard that right. Summer in Australia kicks off in December, and winter doesn't roll in until June. It's like the seasons have decided to flip the script down under. Christmas in Australia is a whole different vibe. Forget about snowmen and cozy fireplaces. Here, families are firing up the barbecue for an outdoor feast, enjoying fresh seafood, and maybe even heading to the beach for a swim. Imagine unwrapping your gifts in flip-flops while the sun shines bright above. It's a laid-back, sun-kissed holiday that feels more like a beach party than a traditional winter celebration. Santa's Aussie surfing adventure. Santa might just swap his sleigh for a surfboard, because that's the Aussie way. While most of the world is bundled up for a snowy Christmas in December, Australians are baking under the summer sun. But here's the twist. Christmas in July is a thing in Australia. With winter chills rolling in, Aussies throw their own festive celebrations, complete with all the Christmas cheer. And speaking of Christmas, Bondi Beach in Sydney pulls in a whopping 40,000 visitors on Christmas Day. But it doesn't stop there. Australia even set a world record for the most people surfing as Santa Claus, with 320 participants riding the waves in full jolly Santa gear. Who knew that Santa had such good surfing skills? If you enjoyed discovering these amazing Aussie facts, don't forget to hit like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this with your friends. Let's spread the love for Australia. Who knows, you might just be teaching someone something new today.